Okay, hello. Welcome to this presentation. It's called Making Inclusive and Accessible Teaching Materials by myself, Luke Miller. Okay, so what is this about? Why are we doing this? Excellence in teaching is a key priority for many higher education institutions, and rightly so. And we, as educators, are obliged to provide our learning in a way that is accessible to all. And this means making provision for learners who may have learning disabilities. Also, we need to bear in mind, where possible, that our learners will all have different learning styles as well, and thus different learning needs. And a large proportion of our international and online students are non-native English speakers. So we need to bear this in mind when we're preparing and delivering our teaching to and for them. So what can we do? Well, if we go back and just quickly mention the Equality Act in 2010, this calls on service providers, and that includes educators like ourselves, to make positive steps to remove barriers for those who have a disability. And this is described as making what's known as reasonable adjustments. And just to break that down a bit further, making reasonable adjustments includes changing the way that things are done. So this could mean things like revisiting current policies or practices to make sure that they don't make it more difficult for some people to access. Reasonable adjustments could also mean changing physical features. So this can be a whole range of things, but it might include something like the lighting within a teaching room or the ventilation in there, for example. And also, reasonable adjustments could include providing extra equipment or services. So we might be talking about using or installing induction loops for people with hearing aids, for example, or it could be about providing materials in a range of different formats. And that's one thing that we will concentrate on in this presentation. So how will our learners benefit? I've compiled a list of tips, I think there's about 7, and these are practical tips for you to consider specifically when designing new or modifying existing learning resources, lecture slides and materials for students. And I believe that if we can adopt as many of these as possible, it will help to enhance our courses' inclusivity and accessibility. So some of these tips will be more applicable to online learners using the virtual learning environment, but others, will be more specific to attending students who are sitting in a lecture theatre. However, most of these tips they're universal good practice ideas, and they'll benefit both of those sets of students regardless of how their course is delivered. It's important perhaps to clarify that when we talk about learners with learning disabilities, what we're talking about is an umbrella term for a wide variety of issues. And it's important to state that these learning disabilities are not a problem with intelligence or motivation. Learners with learning disabilities, their brains are just simply wired a bit differently, and this difference affects how they receive and process information. So the more that we can do to set a level playing field for all students, the better. And we're interested in supporting students who can, for example, who are using assistive technology. And this can mean all kinds of technology, but I'd like to focus on students who use screen readers. This is what we come into contact with the most, I think. And this is normally software on their computer or their browser which reads or translates what is appearing on the screen. This is particularly helpful for blind or partially sighted learners, for example. And we also need to make sure that students with autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, or ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, are all supported as best we can. Students who are deaf or who have a learning impairment, or students who have auditory processing disorder, which is not the inability to hear, it's the inability to interpret, organise and analyse what they're hearing. Also, we need to make sure that some reasonable adjustment is made for them. So moving on, this is sort of the first tip really. I want to just concentrate on fonts. Okay, so a lot of these tips, incidentally, may sound like common sense, just common sense, but in reality they're often ignored, and we're talking about some really simple adjustments to your working practice that can make a real difference to a large number of students, so it's really worth doing. Some simple things when bearing in mind then is to use a simple sans serif font. So Arial and Calibri are good examples of a simple sans serif font. They don't have curved ends, basically, these on the ends, which some learners can find more difficult to process. So use a sans serif font, use a regular style, or if you really want to highlight something, perhaps use bold. But as a rule, don't use italics. They can be more difficult to read, and avoid underlined text as well, because that can be quite hard to read, and it has that added problem of looking like an inactive hyperlink, which is confusing. So use lowercase where possible. There's no real need normally for capitalization or using uppercase. That can send a message of aggression, as well as being more difficult to read than lowercase. And also try and keep the font size a standard size 12 or size 14. Don't go for tiny text, don't go for large text. 12 or 14 is a good guide. So sort of further on, text, blocks of text. This is something we need to look at and consider. So I recommend keeping text left aligned. Don't centralize text, or even worse, justify text, because this can be harder for some learners to process. And also use simple language, another really simple idea, but it's worth mentioning here. Use short sentences. Don't use too much jargon or too many technical terms. If you do need to use acronyms, make sure you're also spelling those out, not just using the letters. If you have lots of paragraphs of text, break them up into smaller paragraphs, or even better, perhaps break them down into sentences and bullet point lists. Okay. Finally, on this slide, use a dark coloured text. So black's normally best, and put that on a light coloured background. So maybe sort of a pale yellow or a beige. That's often considered to be good practice. I've done that in this presentation myself. So I'm practicing what I'm preaching. So the next tip is image use. You may notice that throughout these slides there are some images appearing. You'll also notice I've deliberately kept that the background blank, and I'm using those images to try and reinforce or highlight some of the messages that I'm conveying. It's good practice not to place the text on top of images or sort of intersecting them. You may think you're being creative and cool, but actually it's just far easier to access and process information when you're not trying to detangle it from a photograph in the background. Also, when you're using images, make sure they relate to the text and that you're not using some sort of cryptic image to make a point. Keep it simple. That's always the best plan. So now I want to just talk quickly about alternative formats. So if possible, it's a great idea to try and provide your materials to students in a variety of formats. Ideally, lecture notes or other learning resources should be made available in either PowerPoint or Word for students. Learners who prefer to use their own formatting themes on their own computers can then apply those to your resources that you supply. It's also, if possible, good practice to supply them as PDF too. Then they've got a choice. PDF files are generally very easy to handle and display by the majority of platforms and devices. They know what to do with a PDF. Browsers can handle them generally too very well. So you could argue it's more so, in fact, than PowerPoint or Word documents. So anyway, I suggest offering at least 2 of these if you can. It gives your learners that option to choose which they prefer to use. Finally, be careful when you're formatting and punctuating your documents, because the text reader software will be able to translate it much more easily and accurately if your document has been well formed and formatted. Okay, so a little word about links now. Here's a couple of images to look at. I know these are emails and they're not learning materials per se, but the underlying theme here is the same. If you look at, first of all, the image on the left, you can see a block of text with some links in it. There are 3 mistakes to do with the links that could have easily been avoided to make this text more accessible. So firstly, having a link which just says here is lazy, which is possibly why it's been done, but also it's hard for anyone to interpret if they're using a screen reader. It's much better practice to use meaningful sentences on your link text. So see the image on the right now, and you'll see it says the preliminary timeline. That's a much better link title. Moving on back to the left image, we have a long and indecipherable link for the second link there, and it links to a Google Doc, at a guess. Again, it'd be much better to give our learners a shorter and more meaningful link here, link text. So see the image on the right, that's much better. It even states what type of document it's linking to, which is extra brownie points as far as I'm concerned. And then finally, look at the third link on that left image. It's very contextless. It just says using the request form. So again, this is not ideal. It can be confusing. Which request form is this again? A screen reader will struggle to communicate this in a meaningful way. So glance across to that right image and you'll see that the right image shows a link with an explanatory title, request a new Moodle site. Great. It tells you exactly what form it's requesting. It's much better. So they're really simple changes, but they really affect, they can make a really big difference. So bear those link good practice ideas in mind. So just to reiterate really and recap on what we've just covered with the links, use descriptions for the text. Describe it succinctly exactly what it is you are linking people to. Make the link text clear, concise and meaningful if it's read out of context, which is effectively what some students will be getting if they're using assistive technology. They're getting links out of context potentially. So also avoid resorting to click me or click here. It's lazy and it's a problem. Finally, avoid using long, unintelligible, can't say it, URLs, so like that Google Doc link on the previous slide. Sometimes you get things that are way worse than that as well, just like, paragraphs of link text. Don't do that. It's a bad idea for multiple reasons. Okay, so time and expertise permitting, consider creating audio and video resources for your students. So the learning technologists, including myself in the school, are always on hand to help you do this kind of thing if you feel like you want to do it and you're a bit short on time, or you're a bit kind of worried about how to do it, how to go about it, or get in touch with us if you ever want to, and we can help. And these kinds of resources have got recognised pedagogical benefits, including increased learner motivation. They can help increase the learner experience, and best of all, doing this allows you to provide subtitles for your learners too. We'll talk about that now. So there's quite a few different ways of recording screencasts or videos, and with these come opportunities for automatic captioning and subtitling, which is obviously a great enabling accessible feature that we really need to be pushing. So the university uses a product called Echo 360, which they brand as Encore, and this records the majority of all lectures and is fully automated. And you don't have to do anything as a lecturer other than just turning up and presenting. YouTube and other tools such as Kaltura have the ability to provide auto-captioning to recorded videos too. Now Google Slides, which is what I'm using, offers an amazing new feature where you can speak to your slideshow, which is what I'm doing, and subtitles, as you can see at the bottom of the screen there, are appearing in real time, and they're pretty accurate too. Obviously you have to speak clearly and fairly slowly. I'm not sure how good at that I am. I'm trying my best, but I'm actually trialing it there as we go along in this presentation, and you should be able to see those subtitles appearing at the bottom. So adding videos with subtitles is great for inclusivity and accessibility, for the reasons I've been through on some of the previous slides here. And the accuracy of the technology is just getting better and better. It's just developing, and the algorithms underlying it seem to be improving all the time. So given how enabling this can be, it almost seems a bit of a travesty if we're not using this as widely as we can in our teaching provision. So, and to go one step further, it's also possible to use a combination of Google Slides, auto-captioning tool, and a webinar tool, such as Blackboard Collaborate, for example, to offer online teaching seminars or webinars with real-time subtitles too. So, all of our live interactive sessions run via a webinar can also be screen captured, captions and all, in the future with a few simple steps. So let's bring this all back together. We're obliged to make reasonable adjustments to our lectures and other learning resources. Some of this means a little extra work, I get that. However, doing so has the potential, I think, to enable a large range of learners, and in doing so improve the learning experience for them, and hopefully impact on future students' testimonials as a result. Remember, inclusivity and accessibility are not new terms, but they seem to be growing in importance for many higher education institutions and are now considered to be key priorities. So I recommend that the tips that I've covered here are adopted at the curricular design stage where possible, and also for those who are updating and retrofitting existing teaching resources. I'll leave you with this inspiring quote, I think it's inspiring anyway, which I heard recently at the HE Advanced Teaching and Learning Conference in 2019 this year. One of the keynote speakers, called Joshua Sanderson Kirk, who's a big advocate of widening participation and inclusivity, said quite rightly that excellence without inclusivity is not excellence. And I'll leave you to dwell on those powerful words.